I saw GBH the first time they ever came to America. I was fortunate because I got to see so many of those bands. Exploited, Peter and the Test Tube Babies, Addicts, all those bands seem to have all come over at the same time. And I saw Exploited when they came over the very first time, played the On Broadway in San Francisco. Waddy was on stage. I was in the balcony, and Waddy's vibe on stage was so gnarly and scary that he scared me from being on stage and I was in the balcony. He just would look up at the audience and I was like, I don't want any part of that guy. He was one of the best frontmen ever. Peter and Test Tube Babies, amazing. Loved them. Addicts, when they came over, the makeup, everything. But out of all of those bands, the band that I loved the most was GBH, because their songs, they wrote songs. And honestly, man, Colin, the singer, and Jock, and the whole band, all of them, man, they were rock stars. Colin looked cool, man. I mean, he just had a vibe about them, and their guitar player, first dude I ever saw with a tat on the neck. He had a tat on the neck. Ross, their bass player, he was like the working class dude of the band. And when they came over to play for the first time and played in San Francisco, you got to remember, you saw pictures of them in magazines, but there's no like videos, there's no Google, there's no Instagram, there's no hearing how, Colin feels and a video of him, here I am with my kid. Like that, none of that stuff exists. So seeing them for the first time in real life, you're like, damn, like there they are. That took a few seconds to get through, When they played the On Broadway, they had just played at Santa Monica Civic the night before. And supposedly that was, I don't know, billed as like the biggest punk show to date. And they came up from that show at Santa Monica Civic to do the On Broadway. And I remember Gary Tovar from Golden Voice was with them. And I was out in front of the venue waiting in line to see GBH. And just, with the line of kids down the street. And for some reason, Gary Tovar came out and he was like looking around, talking to people. He's talking to Paul Ratt, the promoter, and he's saying to him like, he's tripping out because he's like, all these kids are from all over the place. And Paul Ratt's like, yeah, you got kids from Sonoma, you got kids from San Jose. And then Gary Tovar goes, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from San Jose. He's like, how far away is that? I'm like, we drove up, that was an hour away. As he's talking to me, he goes, hey man, do you want to meet GBH? And I go, no. Like, I was like, no. Like that, back then it was like, you don't meet the band, that's lame. He's like, all right, well, if you want to meet him, you can meet him. I'm like, no, I'm good. And then he's like, hey, I got this though. This is a t-shirt from last night. And he gave me, I still have it to this day. It's Santa Monica Civic GBH shirt with SSD control. I think the effigies were on the thing. And he gave me the shirt. Just like, yeah, here you go, man. It's cool. I'm like, oh, thanks, man. That's how I met Gary Tovar. I didn't even know who he was at the time. I'm like, I don't know what a Golden Voice is. I'm just a 15-year-old kid trying to get into the show. Little did I know later on, he got me on the Ramones show. He helped pay for my first record. My son Nate, Golden Voice, he does shows with them. It's crazy. That night, GBH, they came out and they were everything that I wanted, and the show was just the songs, the deliver, everything, man. It was great. But the thing that I remembered was Colin. He had this presence on stage, and like I said, Jock and Ross, they just had this just machine behind them. I remember Colin had a bullet belt on, and while he was on stage during "Give Me Fire," he's like, "Give me fire," and like my favorite song, "Give me fire, give me fire," and everyone just dogpiled him on stage. And while we dogpiled him on stage, and everyone's just going nuts, at the On Broadway. And that room felt like it was 3,000 of us, and it was probably 300 of us. It just like, I remember watching him, and that steam was coming off him as he was singing over the audience. And as we dogpiled on the stage, his bullet belt broke. He had a bullet belt, and I grabbed one of the bullets. Boom, I snaked it. I'm like, yes. I threw that in my pocket. Also that night during Big Women, Big Women, they played that, and a little kid that came from San Jose, little long hair, has a little flannel on, goes up on stage. Colin pulls him up. Lars from Rancid. He'd come up that night and he sang Big Women. And like at that point, Lars was like a little kid. He's like, I want to say like maybe still in like 7th, 8th grade. Years and years later, while I was DJing on Indie 103.1, I had my show, Complete Control Radio, and GBH came on as guests. And I remember Colin walks in, and I want to say it might have been Ross. Yeah, it was probably Colin and Ross, and they both came in to do the interview. And, you know, they're just English and funny, you know, all ready to start. And I was so just stoked to have them there, and we were talking about everything in the show. And then I brought up how I saw him for the first time, and literally at this point, you know, it was 1983 when I saw him. So this is like 30 plus years later that I'm having this interview with him, this exchange. I go, hey, I have something of yours, Colin. And he's like, looks at me, he's like, what? And I go, I pull out the bullet. I still had the bullet. I go, I got this bullet off of your belt when it broke at the On Broadway, and I've saved it since then. And I remember he just looked at me and he was like, mate, that's not good. You gotta let go of that, man. You get like, he starts laughing like, dude, really? You know, I don't know. He starts laughing at me like, oh my God. Okay, thanks. And he's like, you can keep it. I'm like, okay, put it back in my pocket.